This lecture is from Chapter 13, and it is on conflict and peacemaking. So why do we have conflict? Social dilemmas. What is best for me versus what is best for the group? Let's look at two research studies related to this dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma. Two prisoners are being questioned regarding a crime they have recently committed. They are not allowed to speak to each other prior to being questioned, and each one has to decide if he is better off confessing or remaining silent. So in other words, do you confess? In other words, do you tell on your partner, or do you remain silent? The diagram to the right kind of shows the different options. And it's a little bit complicated, but if you study it for a little while, I think it'll make more sense. So you have prisoner A and you have prisoner B. Now, if both of them remain silent, they don't tell on each other, then they both get 2 years in prison. If prisoner A doesn't tell anything and prisoner B confesses, then prisoner B is going to get 8 years. And, prisoner A will get 8 years because he remained silent. B, however, he decided to confess, so he only gets 1 year. Now, again, kind of the same thing. If prisoner B remains silent, doesn't confess anything, and prisoner A confesses, prisoner B gets 8 years and A gets 1 year. So essentially, if you confess, you only get 1 year. But if you don't, you're going to get 8 years. Now, if both confess, they both get 5 years. So again, you kind of have to study the diagram to figure out what's going on. But essentially, when there's two prisoners and they don't know what the other one's going to say, they don't come up with a plan, you end up with conflict because you don't know whether to remain silent or confess. So look at that a little bit more closely. There's also the tragedy of the commons, an economic and environmental science problem where individuals have access to a shared resource and act in their own interest at the expense of other individuals. This can result in overconsumption, underinvestment, and depletion of resources. So do I put gas in my own car to serve my own needs, or do I conserve gas so the resource won't be depleted? This is going to create some conflict within myself. So how do we resolve these conflicts within ourselves and social dilemmas? Regulation. Rules are put in place by a higher authority, such as the government. Small groups. The smaller the group, the more we will have a personal relationship with each other. This makes us more likely to do what's best for the group instead of ourselves. Communication. Communication enables cooperation. Discussing the dilemma forges a group identity which enhances concern for everyone's welfare. We can also change the payoffs. We are rewarded for behavior that is beneficial to the group and punished for behavior that is only beneficial to us. For example, reward. Carpoolers are allowed to use their own lane on the interstate. Punishment, however, is if I litter, I will have to pay a fine. More causes of conflict, competition. Hostilities often arise when groups compete for scarce jobs, housing, or resources. That's kind of the us versus them concept that it creates. Perceived injustice. We might say that's not fair. Everyone should be treated equally. So that's going to create some conflict, or it could create some conflict. Misperception. We misinterpret another person's or group's behavior, motivation, goals, and etc. So why do we do this? Why do we misperceive another person's behavior? Seeds of misperception. If you look at this chart, we'll go through it real quickly. Why do we misperceive? The self-serving bias. This leads individuals and groups to accept credit for their good deeds and shuck responsibility for bad deeds. Self-justify inclines people to deny the wrong of their evil acts that cannot be shucked off. Fundamental attribution error. Each side sees the other's hostility as reflecting an evil disposition. Preconceptions. One then filters the information and interprets it to fit one's preconceptions. Groups polarize these self-serving, self-justifying, biasing tendencies. Groupthink, which I believe we've looked at before. One symptom of groupthink is the tendency to perceive one's own group as moral and strong and the opposition as evil and weak. The mere fact of being in a group triggers an in-group bias. And negative stereotypes, once formed, are often resistant to contradictory evidence. So now that we've looked at these conflict, let's look at how do we achieve peace. Contact, proximity and the accompanying interaction, anticipation of interaction, and mere exposure boosts liking. It reduces anxiety, increases empathy, humanizes others, and decreases perceived threats. So simply proximity to other people or other groups can achieve peace. Cooperation, when two groups are striving toward the same goal or face a common threat, cooperating can increase cohesiveness and reduce conflict. Superordinate goals, a leader might create goals that require groups to work together toward a common goal. Group and superordinate identities. I recognize that parts of me and my group are similar to types of you and your group. That's going to make us more cohesive and more likely to compromise, perhaps. Communication. There are three types. Bargaining, which says I'll do this for you if you'll do this for me. So that's going to reduce our competition. Mediation, which a third party assists each side with coming to a compromise. And arbitration. The sides are unable to reach a compromise through mediation, so a third party, and this would be such as a judge in a courtroom, makes the decision for them. So those are three types of communicating in order to reach consensus. And finally, conciliation. This is similar to mediation in that there's usually a third party involved. Initial conciliatory steps entail some small risk but do not jeopardize either side's security. Rather, they are calculated to begin edging both sides down the tension ladder. So conciliation is different from mediation in that it does require you to take a risk but eventually results in mediation and both sides compromising and coming to a unified decision. So as always, thank you for listening and please reach out anytime.